Um, I think I just want people to know that I'm human. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Welcome, y'all, to So You Mean to Tell Me. Back to another episode. We have a special guest, Ashley.
hey, thank you for having me.
Of course. We're going to just get right into it. We have a mental health conversation to talk about. It's one of those conversations that is necessary. It may be a little difficult, it may be a little uncomfortable, but I think it's necessary that we have these conversations just so other people can know that they're not alone and other people can know
Mm,
that other people are going through it as
I
well.
agree.
Yes. So the first segment we're going to talk about is mental health and personality disorders. I just wanted to ask you, were there any personality disorders that you have gone through that you had to overcome, or anything you can tell us about that?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder in 2018. And this was after like 20 years of being treated and or dealing with treatment resistant, depression and
Right.
anxiety. And I was diagnosed with bipolar, anxiety disorder, and just was never getting better, like managing symptoms and stuff and trying medication and therapy, and just nothing was working. And I just had like a moment where like, I don't even know what precipitated it. I just remember realizing that I had been out of my body. I was like a single mom. It was late one night. I was exhausted, and I just like was standing in my kitchen, and I realized like I think maybe I was in my body. Somehow I became aware of the fact that I was in my body, and then I realized that I had been out of my body. It was just like a profound moment. I immediately started researching dissociation and disorders around that, and realized like that I had all of the symptoms. So I had been like actively treating for mental health for bipolar and stuff. So
Right.
I went to my therapist, or to my psychiatrist actually, and that like got the ball rolling on like actually treating me properly.
I love that you found yourself to be aware, because a lot of us don't have that
Mhm.
self-awareness, and a lot of us don't even
Mhm.
realize something is wrong, and we wouldn't have even took the step to research. So that's just great on
Mhm.
your end that you were aware enough to do that.
Yeah, it is like looking back, it is pretty rare like
Hmm.
that
Right.
happens. Um, yeah, and I just became like, it became like my number one priority and focus. But it wasn't like I just went straight from that realization to like getting better. I was in like a toxic relationship.
Right.
I was, drinking and
Mhm.
heavily to deal with the relationship. So it took me a couple years to actually get to the place where I was willing to get sober so that I could work on me. It was in the middle of the pandemic, and I was just like drinking to excess again, where it wasn't really me. And I realized like, if I, at the same time, I'm wanting to get better, but if I want to do that, I have to get sober. So
Right.
when I got sober, I was able to then feel my feelings and they come into my body, and that was like the beginning of me getting better.
And would you say the main driving force to you drinking was your relationship, or your previous
I
relationship?
think I started self medicating like really young. I was like 12.
Hmm.
And so that just always worked for me. The alcohol always worked for me. I have a hair. The alcohol always worked for me, and it was just very accessible. And in 2015, I had gotten to a point where I was drinking, and then I also was being prescribed Xanax for my anxiety, among other medications. And I don't know if you know about Xanax and like how it works, but I didn't know that you can get like heavily addicted to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I found myself very addicted to the Xanax, really, really sick, drinking 2015. Also, there was like a whole bunch of other stuff going on in my life. But I went to treatment and I went to detox and got sober, but at the same time, I was getting divorced. So
Hmm.
I wasn't like doing the work on my mental health. I was just like maintaining. you
Right.
know, and then things got hard again. I had like 90 days and then I started to drink again. So it was like just always something that I went back to when I didn't want to feel my feelings, I guess, you know. So that
Mm-hmm.
was like the last, I mean, I didn't, I really at the end, you know, it's very much like you're kind of, I wasn't having fun. Like I stopped having fun, you know. I wasn't, it just, I realized like I'm just doing this to numb these scary feelings that I have. And if I could just feel them, figure out how to deal with that, I wouldn't need to do this, you know, and I wouldn't have to feel like shit, you know. So it was very slow realization that I had to be sober if I wanted to come back to my body, because that's like, that is the like hallmark symptom of BPD is dissociation. You know, we're just
Mm-hmm.
completely out of our bodies.
Mm-hmm. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really interesting that you say that you wanted to feel your feelings. That's something that I really advocate for a lot, because a lot of people, they try to avoid their feelings, and I tell them you can't avoid those feelings, even if
Mm-hmm.
it's feelings you don't like. You
Mm-hmm.
have to feel those feelings out, and that's something that I struggle with myself. If I don't like something, I just try to go avoiding. Period. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to deal with it at all. So I can definitely relate in that
Mm-hmm.
manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for sure. And I was, you know, it's, I I just started talking about this like openly, and there's a whole bunch of reasons why I haven't and why I am now. But people hear BPD and they think, you know, like, oh shit, this person is crazy, you know, or
Exactly.
there's like a lot of really specific stigma around that. And I realized as I started to heal that I wanted people with BPD to know that you actually can get better. You know, you can find a therapist who's willing to work with you. Like a lot of therapists do not want to take borderline clients. And what they don't realize is like we are just victims, you know, of like trauma. Like we're just dealing with like really intense third degree trauma. And if you can get to the trauma, you can deal with the symptoms. But we don't have, I like describe it as emotional third degree burns. Like everything hurts. Like even the slightest feeling of abandonment or rejection or like uncertainty about the future, like it's all just too much because you don't have emotional regulation skills. So like when I got in therapy, I was like, oh, not everything is like, I'm not in danger at every moment.
Right.
Like my inner child is like crying out, and like I loved your inner child episode because
Thank
it's
you.
so true. Like she was crying out because she was left alone by
Mm-hmm.
like narcissistic caregivers. So like getting to the antecedent of behaviors was so important, and it was like really just day after day like exhaustively sitting and like being like, I'm emotionally stimulated right now and I don't really know why, but I'm just gonna like feel my feelings, you know,
Right.
and like just feel it. And then you feel it and it runs its course, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it's exhausting. It's not really that simple, but in a way it kind of is. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean?
You mentioned two really big things, the trauma and the relationships. Can you really speak to, with saying how, whatever you're comfortable with, what trauma really, what do you think is your third degree trauma that pushed you
Mm,
into that?
yeah. I think it goes back to my family of origin and my parents, my
Right.
caretakers. Um, and, you know, like you said, without saying too much, when there's like a narcissistic caretaker, whether it's father, mother, doesn't really matter. For me, it was my mother. There's like extreme, like hot, cold behavior. There's like withholding of love. You know, there's a lot of like criticism and judgment. And I was a perfectionist like from the age of 7. Like a childhood friend of mine was helping me with something I was working on in therapy, and the things that she was telling me from her memory of me at 7, I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. You know, it was pretty enlightening for me because I kind of thought that it was normal. I guess of course I thought it was normal. I was a child. But until I was in my 30s, actually it was when I started having kids that I realized like things maybe were not normal. But yeah, I mean, my mom was very young when she had me, raised very religious, but
Mm-hmm.
also just really great at everything. And, you know, she too has really unhealed, deep trauma that has been like papered over with religion. So she's just been passed down. Her mom, same thing, and it just got passed down. I kind of felt like my mom just hated me, like all the time, you know, and
I definitely understand that.
yeah, so that, you know, I always say, like, as a child, like, you don't stop loving your parent, like, but you hate yourself, because I always thought it was me. Like, what am I doing that is causing her to behave this way toward me? And you learn like a pattern of relational behaviors that are just like really toxic, you know. And like, I didn't realize until I was in EMDR that, like, you know, my hot cold feelings, like, I remember very specifically being like maybe 3 or 4, and like having like a little friend that was like a little younger than me, and I loved her and that she was so sweet, and we were playing, and I remember like just hugging her and then just feeling so disgusted and pushing her away. And I never understood like why I did that, but I did it because
Not
that's
you.
how my mom was with me. So it was very much just a response. So, you know, like in intimate relationships, even in friendships, like I tend to get my feelings hurt really easily.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like, and there's also like kind of an element of like emotional impermanence where, for instance, like if this person that I'm in a relationship with goes out of town and they're not like in constant contact or like daily contact or like really kind of purposed contact with me, I will like forget that they love me,
Right.
you
And you
know?
start questioning, like, do you even care? Like, and
and
a lot of
and
people feel this way.
yeah, yeah, and I just thought like I could never like figure out like what is wrong with me that I, you know, I would preemptively end relationships because I was afraid of being abandoned. And I think ultimately was very avoidant more than anything. Like, you know, even in my platonic friendships with my girlfriends in high school, there was a breakdown, you know, on my end. And like, thankfully, and I had like tons of friends, but they were all like very surface level. And thankfully, you know, I do have one friend from high school who has stuck with me, and she'll tell me like things that I did in certain situations and things I said that were so like cold. Not like outright like mean and nasty, but just I could look back and say like I was so detached. You know, I was so like you were trying to connect with me and I was so like detached, but she could see it. Like I had no perception of it, but she could see it. So, you know, it's a lot. I still think that BPD, I always say this, like even with recovery, it always comes up in your relationships. That's where it gets triggered. That's where it gets triggered. So for me, I ended up with, I'm twice divorced. I ended up with men who were very similar to my mother. You know, it's like the healing fantasy of like, I'll be enough, but I won't be too much because I like live in this space where I'm like not enough, but I'm also too much.
Right.
So I'll try to navigate that and I will get this person to, I don't know what I was trying to get them to do, but it's the narcissistic like love bombing and stuff and like the hot cold. So you're like, I guess trying to change them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like my relationships kept failing, picking the wrong people, and it just was a process of like becoming, I was very self-aware because I was hyper vigilant, but I was not understanding why all of this was happening. You know what I mean?
Until you started going to therapy and
Mm-hmm.
really understanding. So, how did
Mm-hmm.
you begin to really start just to cope with it all once you started going to therapy and really understanding what was going on?
Mm-hmm. That is such a great question. It was like a slow process of me, like uncoping and then like learning how to cope. Like stopping the coping, like the drinking, the, I don't know, like like I would shop and like buy stuff. Like I was just thinking the other day, like I have barely ordered anything online in like
That is
months.
so me.
You know, like but I was like really shopping, like quite a bit. But like slowly taking back those things that were like dopamine chasing. And
Mhm.
then my therapist would just tell me, like my first therapist would say, okay, so just when you get emotionally stimulated, and I had like different like little exercises I would do or things I would think about, and then I would get emotionally stimulated, and then I would sit there and feel it and like think about where it is in my body, what is coming up for me as I feel this. And like there were a couple times where it actually like triggered a panic attack because I was like, oh my god, I can't do this. But I just kept trying. And eventually I did get like bumped up to like a higher level of care just to like deal with the trauma that was coming up in the actual then feeling of my feelings. And like there were other things going on in my life at the same time that were pretty traumatic and stressful. But just the stuff that I was working on individually in therapy was mostly in the beginning about just feeling feelings and then learning how to like deal with them through like mindfulness, you know, meditation, and just like self-care. You know, like for
Mhm.
me it's like nourishing with food and water and my micronutrients and stuff, which is a separate thing, but also like exercising, going outside, spending time with people that like I love and love me, and there's no pressure on the relationship like my kids, you know?
Right.
It was about being present in my life because I just had not been present for such a long time, you know? Like so many things happened, I had so many experiences, and I say this a lot, like I have this whole life that I like want to write about, I want to talk about, but I don't have memories. Like I have little flashes of something happening and I left my body to cope. And then the trauma, it's all there. I feel it all. But I don't know what any of it means. And so I'm just like bouncing from flash to flash to flash. So it's like I'm trying to put those pieces together so that I can kind of, because it's all about like recovery, it's about moving forward. Like we don't want to live, that's what gets you stuck, is like when you're in your head and you're in your thoughts,
Mhm.
that's continuing the cycle. So like learning mindfulness is helpful for me because I'm like, okay, I can be mindful of this as something that happened or a thought that I'm having and what it means and what it is, but it's not defining the moment that I'm in right now,
You
you
speak
know?
so, yes.
So
Yes.
just like realizing that was like, oh my god, okay, this is okay. It's a lot because then it means that you exist, right?
Mhm.
Like I'm not just up here, I'm not just in my head. Actually, I'm a person with a body and a soul, and I have thoughts because that's my brain's job, is to create thoughts. And because of my trauma and because feeling abandoned, like I my parents would leave us home alone, which I don't know. I'm 30, I'll be 37, so I'm a millennial. Our parents left us home alone. I don't know what your experience is. It wasn't really that. It was the fact that I didn't know if they were going to come back. Like I didn't have like that assurance. I remember I would just like look out the window and like wait for my mom to come back. I didn't know that it was going to be fine, you know? Like, so I had to create thoughts and stories to keep myself okay. And that's what you do with borderline when you're not in your body and all these things are happening. You create the narrative. So just like learning how to notice and label, like that's the thing, dialectical behavioral therapy, I'm sure you know this.
I
It's
do.
noticing and labeling your thoughts and then like assigning whatever needs to happen with that thought. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And realizing like it doesn't define you. Like we all have thoughts, we all have fear, we all have all of the things. And I couldn't figure out why not everyone else, but some people were functioning fine and I wasn't, you know? But it went back to the trauma, and that's why I say like most of my symptoms, my team says this, my treatment team, like we're just complex trauma. Like there's a huge overlap, but also like a lot of borderline people, when they do get into therapy, they have such relief in symptoms when they've done the trauma work because we're processing we're not constantly recreating the cycle, because you've got to just like process that trauma, honey. It's so important. And EMDR was like huge for me. I don't know if you've done it, but
I haven't. I was gonna talk to you about that, but I just want to say that your emotional intelligence is through the roof.
I'm
Like,
sorry.
yeah,
I'm like, I could talk about this forever. I'm sorry. It just cut me off if I'm like
no,
saying
you're
too much.
fine. Your
Okay.
emotional intelligence is through the roof. Like, I'm listening to you talk so vividly, so fluently about how you feel and meaning what you feel and feeling how you feel and just understanding that, because a lot of people, it sounds so basic, but it's really not. A lot of people cannot talk about how they feel, and you would think it's a basic skill, but it's something that's
You
really
have to
not being
learn.
taught.
It's
Yes.
not.
It's
Yeah.
not. You have to learn. You have to learn. A lot of people like to just repress feelings and emotions and just label them good and bad. And I try to tell people there's no such thing as good and bad, like feelings and emotions.
Right. Yes.
You're gonna feel them all. And you just got to learn how to deal with them. How do you navigate through them? And how do you, like you said, it's not a defined moment. It's just that. So
Right.
because we did talk about BBD, I also want to talk about the eating disorder side of it, because you did say that there were a lot of things that played a part into it. I just want to say that I believe that self-image and body image is so important, and it's something that I do advocate for. um all sizes, a lot of people, they will shame in both areas, and I just want to ask you, what did you
Mm-hmm.
go through in that degree?
Um, yes. Oh my gosh. This is something we need to talk about more because so many of us are neurodiverse. Like,
Yes.
there's a large, like, body of, like, thought around this and discourse that, like, BPD and other personality disorders are actually, like, neurodiversities.
Mm-hmm.
And I do agree with that. And so with that, there's so much like eating stuff, there's so much like food stuff that happens because it's there's I could just go into, because even like my kids have like little eating disorders like related to their neurodiversity, and it's not like they're like I'm influencing them, restricting them, or they're just they're just the way that they are with what they want to eat and what they don't want to eat. So, but also too, like there's like evidence and research to back up like the what it is as like a criteria that you have to meet. I don't really look at it as like they need to be treated for, I can't even remember what ARFID, I think is what it's called. It's like it's a lot of kids with ADHD and autism have it. My kids are my little youngest is autistic.
Mm-hmm.
He is very picky with his food. With me, that was like a tangent. I was restricted from a young age. So my mom has a very like rampant eating disorder. The way I talk about this, I try to be like really careful because I never want to trigger anybody. There was just a really heavy emphasis on like me being small, and she has a completely different body type than I do, and so as there was very deliberate like feeding for me. I didn't learn how to intuitively eat. I was just told what I was going to eat and that was it. And it got to a point where I was like going into the kitchen in the middle of the night, at 5, climbing up onto the counter to get food because I was hungry.
Wow.
So there was emphasis on smallness, also not like wanting too much. Like, it was like, don't want like a lot of food or a lot of like success or a lot of recognition. It wasn't just about the food, it was about being small. And not for her, I think there's this dynamic in mother-daughter relationships sometimes where there's some jealousy. So there was a lot of jealousy with her. So she taught me well. My experience, I think I just had like a ton of distortions, around my body, especially when I started to develop and go through puberty. So I had to really, because I got my period at 10. I started like developing and wearing a bra like in elementary, so she was very on top of my body at all times, making sure that everything was just so. And if I started to gain, there was like we were ramping up the behaviors and stuff. So it was very much like an activity that we did together. So it makes it really even harder in my experience to recover, because that is something that ties me to her in a sense. So I think I was taught that it was normal, and I never looked outside of that very narrow view that we have when we are in eating disorder, around like nourishment, energy, like calories being energy, like nutrition being like energy, and I think that, a lot of my mental health was exacerbated by that, because I was constantly, I was never called like fat at school, or teased or called any like kind of derogatory anything. That wasn't my experience. My self-talk was just very negative, because I was constantly being criticized by my mother. So it wasn't necessarily like coming from my peers, but I think it certainly affected my relationships with them, because I couldn't be like authentic, like I couldn't.
And that still makes it valid. A lot of people
Mm-hmm.
don't realize the experience doesn't always come at school. We see that a
Mm-hmm.
lot, the bully, but sometimes it's at
Mm-hmm.
home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I had like, she's incredibly judgmental, and so I internalized that, and then I became incredibly judgmental,
Mm-hmm.
not just of me, but of other people. And so that was something that I had to really like, I didn't even know. I really had no idea about what I was doing to myself until I was diagnosed actually with blood cancer, which we'll get to.
Right.
And I realized like I had a low heart rate. I had a low resting heart rate. I had other stuff going on that was, very easily dealt with through like restoration of the nutrition. So I needed to get a dietitian, get on a meal plan. I didn't have to like go to inpatient or do anything like that, thank God. But it's really, it's a mindset that you live every single day thinking about food and body, just constantly, constantly, you know?
And like you said, food is important for the mind. You need that nourishment for your mind,
Mm-hmm.
literally for your mental health.
Right, like my therapist is like, you are not starving your body, you are starving your brain.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to start eating.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't know. I was a absolute like Bible carrying like religion of diet and body culture. I knew all the tricks. I had tried it all, and again, like it was a like a bonding activity for my mother and I. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's really like that makes it hard too, because you have to like sometimes you have to cut them off in order
Mm-hmm.
to get well.
And I was
So
gonna ask you about that. How is your relationship now, you and your mother's?
mhm. We have been no contact for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
The last time I saw her, and I do wish her well. I love her. I'm actually, this is like an active like thing I'm working on right now in therapy. It's just putting myself out there and just letting it be what it is, because like you can probably tell, I like to write, I like to talk about this kind of stuff, but I'm afraid to put myself out there because I'm afraid she's gonna find me and she's gonna judge me, and
Mm-hmm.
her flying monkeys are gonna come, and it's gonna be a whole thing again. So actually, it was a friend of mine who can relate and had a similar situation with her mother, who was like, just who cares? Like, so
Literally.
speak and do and be the thing, and like, who cares if
Tell
she
your truth,
finds you?
girlfriend.
Who cares? And that's like, I get it on an intellectual level, but it's so, my therapist was like, you're giving her a lot of power. You're giving her a lot of power. So I am like, by doing this with you, like, this is me like actually doing what I am scared shitless to do, to be
I'm
honest,
proud
because
of you,
thank you.
of
Thank
course.
you. So and there's a lot of reasons for that, not just like the ED, but the last time I saw her, we talk about this a lot, like it's a progressive disease. Because I think part of that is because you have to eat to live. We have to eat to live. Like
Literally.
so it's very complicated, and it progresses with us as we age, and it was just really hard to see her the way that she was when I saw her. And if she ever heard me say that, she would just probably rage to no end and be so offended. But I want her to get well. I realized that it was starting to touch my kids, and it was really keeping me, just her being in our life was just keeping me from getting the help and the healing that I needed. So that was in 2021. We have been no contact. I am like a completely different person than I was. I think I'm like more me. And like when you talk about the inner child, like things are happening in my life that are bringing the inner child out. I'm like, oh my God, hey. Like I actually feel like I'm 7, 8 years old, like here in this moment, actually being authentic, having fun in relationships, like and letting that be fine, like Barbie was like such a fun like moment for us in our family. Like I was just, it's so important to like be able to re-meet yourself, especially after you've been out of your body for such a long time. So like learning to eat and nourish myself, and like even like I couldn't be on camera. Like I hate being on camera. I probably won't watch this.
Oh,
I may I might not listen to it.
you can listen.
I'm kidding. No, but like I'm sure you can relate to this. Like just always so aware. It's like you're so aware in your head. You're doing the thing. You're judging yourself from this outside place that like makes no sense. So like learning to eat and then get in my body, it's like a whole thing, of just it's a process. That's what I always tell people. Like it's fine if you just want to say like I'm landing. I'm not in my body yet, but I'm landing. Just keep going. Just keep, because you will get there. It's so hard and it takes so long. That's why people don't do it. And I get that.
Because if it was easy, more people would do it.
Right. And I think part of it is like because we don't talk about it. So it's really not easy when you are alone, like for sure, So this is I just like when I listened to your inner child episode, I fell in love with you. I'm like, this girl is amazing. You're so cute. And I resonate so much with just what you're doing, because this is one thing I'm doing is like finding people who are doing what I want to do, right? Find those people, connect with them, like because we're all like you and I, we want the same things. You know what I mean?
We're all
like
you're
doing it. Yeah. We've become very siloed, like in individual like little bubbles. I don't know if you noticed that, but
So you mentioned that it started to touch your kids, and I just wanted to touch a little bit on generational trauma, because I know you said your mother had her problems with your grandmother and stuff like that. So what are you doing to end the generational trauma in your family?
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I got like kind of off on like a tangent there, but yeah, it started to touch my kids, my oldest. And that was when I finally was like, I cannot do this anymore. So I had to take steps to kind of part ways with her, and then like immediately got into therapy myself. And it was a few months because I had to like figure it out for me. And then I started my oldest son. He was like 12 or 11 or 12 at the time, to like deal with some situations that had happened with my mom. Like I wanted him to be able to process that, but also he was like going through puberty, and like the pandemic was happening, and that's when I started to realize like that really understand that my shit was affecting my kids' behavior and the way that they are showing up. And he was having like angry outbursts and stuff, and there's like a lot of stuff that goes on between him and his brother, because his brother is autistic. He also had like a cranial deformity at birth, so he's had like 6 like head surgeries in like 5 years. Like so it was like crazy for a while, and it went from me and his brother Elias, like my oldest, I had him when I was 22, to then having a brother who was very high needs. And like the story that he told himself was that mommy, like Jackson took mommy away from me. So he had all this built up anger, resentment, fear. He had like issues with abandonment. I mean, I had to realize this about myself to then realize this about him, that I was doing to him what was had happened to me essentially. And that was the beginning of like breaking and interrupting the cycle, because I then just immediately started to hold space for everything that he was dealing with, instead of, I was so fearful of it before and trying to fix it, trying to convince him that like everything's fine, like just really not able to deal with like the weight of it because it was triggering me so much. So dealing with my own stuff helped me open up that space for him to be able to have all of that. And once I was able to give him that, he was like, oh, I have space to feel my feelings, and nobody's gonna sit here and tell me that I'm wrong or why I shouldn't feel that way, or why it's not really like that. Like all he wanted was like validation, so it's parents. I always say this, like, okay, if your kids are having behavioral problems, what's going on with the parents? Like that's what I want to know. What's going on with the parents first? Because it usually is that, because we are so triggered by them because they're like us and we were not tolerated. I don't know about you, but like my emotions were not tolerable in my home. I was not allowed to have opinions or feelings. Like I am a child. You're just a kid. Yep. You will be fine. And that's just like so damaging.
It's really exhausting. It's such a bad thing because it doesn't make sense to me. What do you mean a child? It's just so invalidating, and then they wonder so why people grow up and don't want to acknowledge their feelings because they were taught not to. Right, I definitely had that experience.
Yeah. So I saw that playing out and reflecting, and I had to just make, I had tried to like cut my mom out for quite a few years before then, but there was like a lot of conditional stuff going on with financial support and stuff. So, I really it was a process of doing that, and then getting myself to a place where I was like acknowledging and taking action. And then I was able to get some tools to help me deal with my kids, they just feel what they feel and they are what they are. That's how they come into this world. And I noticed that they were like exhibiting behaviors of like anxiety around me because they were walking on eggshells. Mommy's stressed out, mommy's this, she's that. So I just couldn't see that play out anymore. I was just like, I have to do something. So once I started working on me and just getting real with myself and like just saying, I'm a good mom. I was doing the best I could do at the time with the skills I had, and they know how much I love them and they love me. Like it's not as bad as I think, because I'm 60% there because I'm acknowledging it and I'm getting help. So I can bridge that gap in the meantime. It will happen, but you just have to keep trying. That's the thing. You just have to keep trying. And it is really hard every day. That's what I always say. Like, it's really hard. Like, I'm not always like this. Like, there are days where I'm in bed and I'm fucking depressed, and I'm tired, and we all go through it. But I think that's why it's like so important to talk about, because that's how you can like get out of bed more days.
Yeah, because it's not always the good days. There's a lot of people who come online and they have these platforms and they only show the good days. And, it's good to, you don't want to show the bad parts of your life. But I think it is important to let people know that you are sometimes having bad days. So the people who look up to you, they don't think, oh, I need to be like them. And now they're chasing perfectionism, and that doesn't even exist, I see that a lot. I see that a lot online.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I think I just want people to know that I'm human. Like, I think that for me, that's what it's been about, acknowledging is like that I'm human. And perfectionism is like my Achilles heel. I just don't even know, it's just like fear. That's what it is. I mean, it's fear because I always say like, I'm afraid of everything.
Yeah.
So that's why I try to be perfect at everything, because I'm afraid of everything. So eh, realizing, like you said, literally nothing is perfect, that in and of itself is just such, like, you can be good. You can be good. You can be good. You can be good enough. That's just what I tell my kids. Be good enough. It's fine. I don't need you to be great at everything. I just need you to try. Like, just try.
Exactly.
Just
And
show
that's
up. That's it. That's enough. So just keeping showing up for us means, like, for me, it just means getting up, being conscious, and checking in with myself, and where I'm at, even if I'm at like a low point. That's been like the big thing, is being able to realize and like acknowledge. Like the other week I had like some emotional like meltdowns of a sort, and just, it was minor, it was mild, but I just got in touch with my therapist because I was like, this feels a little on the edge for me. Like, it feels a little edgy. I feel like maybe it's too much. So I was able to get in the session and process it. Like, I didn't go to the alcohol, I didn't go to, whatever, shopping, eating, all of the things that we do to chase dopamine.
Mm-hmm.
Scrolling on social media. Like, I feel like we are up against a lot, especially with social media, like you said. It really is. It makes everything so much harder. But it also is like, we need it. So what do? We need it to be connected.
I love how just aware that you are, because I feel we need parents like you, because
Mm,
like the kids growing up, they're facing a lot of challenges. Like you said, social
mm-hmm,
media and all these things are coming up. So we need somebody, we need their parents. They need that guidance. They
mm-hmm,
need somebody to sort out the goods and the bads, because if
mm-hmm,
not, they're going to just be taking everything in, and then they'll be having that dopamine chase, and they won't
mm-hmm,
know when to call to get help. So
mm-hmm,
it's just beautiful
mm-hmm.
seeing just how your story is just, I love your story. Like, you just
Thank
came from
you.
such a place, and you're doing great. Like, even if
Thank
you're
you.
still having those bad days, we all do. We
Mm-hmm,
all have bad days.
mm-hmm.
But you're
That's
doing great.
life. That's
Yep.
life. And I think, yeah, I mean, we 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 learn how to cope the way that we learn how to cope, right? So for some of us, the bad days are really, really, really bad. And even if, or maybe they were just like mildly bad. But then if you're not dealing with it and processing it, then it's just building up in your body. So it's so important to, like you said, like, just be present and just say, like, it's fine, I had a bad day today and it's fine, you know?
Yep. And tomorrow
Yeah.
will be better. Maybe not, but
Mm-hmm.
we'll see, you know?
You have to keep trying. Yeah.
So we said that mental health is health. You know, your body is just as important as your mind, and vice versa. And you mentioned that you do have chronic blood cancer, correct?
Yes.
So I just wanted you to just talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was, like I said, I'll be 37 next month. I had been in therapy for about a year, like really solid, an EMDR, and I was, like, I actually at the time remember just saying, like, I feel better than I felt in years. I'm in great shape. Like, and it was just a complete, like, shock for me when this all went down. I think I really haven't even talked about it, um, because it's just hard to talk about. And also, like, where do you talk about this? And, like, how do you, because people get so uncomfortable with the word cancer, and that's how I was before this. So I just had routine blood work with my psychiatrist in, it was actually it was May 2021. And my platelets were high. And I realized when I followed up with my GP that I had gotten the COVID shot that day or the day before the vaccine, and she was like, that's probably what it is, because it's like a antivirus. So it's probably your platelets are just a little elevated. It's fine. Okay. So a year later, we followed up again. They were higher. So I actually ended up, so I was referred to hematology oncology. Ended up in the ER with COVID, as like in the middle of this testing with the oncologist. And my heart rate was super low. It was like below 40. And so I went into the ER, and they did a routine check. They checked my heart, everything was fine, and they said, oh, you're probably, you're in great physical, like, fit shape. and your based on your habits, like it's probably just that. Okay. But when I looked at my discharge report, like my platelets were like in the 800s, and like the normal range is like I think between like 100 and 400 for a woman. And but they just like discharged me, and then it wasn't even like an hour later that the oncologist called and said, I've been trying to get a hold of you. I was in the ER for 2 days, you know. She's like, I've been trying to get a hold of you. Like, I'm so sorry, but like your test came back positive for leukemia. So that was like a moment in my bedroom where I was just like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, I'm 35. You know, like your whole like head just starts to spin, you know, because also too, I didn't really have like, I've really connected more to my higher power recently, and also just me. So I just had like this fear response of like, oh my God, am I gonna die? And I don't know if that's what everybody does, but that's what I did. Anyway, we went in there. It was, you know, I say this a lot. Like I said this in my prep, just to trust yourself, trust your gut. Because when I went in to meet with the oncologist after that test came back, she was like very much like skeptical, I would say. I was gonna say in doubt, but she was just really skeptical. Like when I was telling her about my symptoms, lost an earbud, because I'm so young, you know. She was just like, I don't know, you know, and I just felt it. And I remember I had brought my now ex came with me to my first appointment, and he was like kind of trying to in the car like reassure me and say like, you know, we think this was actually, I'm sorry, before I got the test back that I was positive for the leukemia. I was super anemic also. So that's another thing. Like, don't just go and take iron pills because you're anemic. Because when they started treating me for the anemia, in between the tests, it raised my other cell lines. And that was actually one of the things that confirmed that I actually did have cancer. And then when they got the results back for the gene test, it was positive for the mutation. So it was a process of getting diagnosed, and then there's like a whole like thing around my age that I had to like really deal with, because like the oncologist was like, this is so rare and so kind of unheard of. Like we're really dealing with patients like in their 60s typically, you know, who are getting this. So there was just a lot of uncertainty and kind of fear around that initially for me, because I thought like, am I gonna have like a decreased lifespan here? Like what's gonna happen, you know? So I did live with a little bit of uncertainty for a few weeks until like she monitored my CBC. It was like on a weekly basis with the iron, and then eventually I ended up starting chemo, getting phlebotomies, which is just like where they remove blood, like a certain amount of blood to like, I don't know, lighten things up, make more space. I just have an overabundance of red blood cells. So that's what happens. Causes just really kind of obscure symptoms that like didn't all like make sense until after I started treating, like excessive sweating, like itching and burning, like after you get out of a hot shower, which I just always thought was like because the water was too hot. Like trouble breathing, you know, sometimes like that's why people have like strokes and heart attacks with this disease, because your blood gets so thick, or you get in an accident and you have so many platelets that you don't clot, so you bleed out. I mean, people have all kinds of complications from this. So just the fact that along the way, this is like kind of disjointed because again, I don't really talk about this, but every step along the way there were like little moments where I was like, I need to trust myself in the way that I feel in this and kind of push a little bit.
Advocate for you, especially as a woman. Everybody, but I feel like especially as a woman, when you go into the hospital or the doctor, I feel like a lot of the times we're just not taken seriously. And I'm like, listen to us. It can be abnormal. It can be something unheard of, but it's what I'm feeling. And I'm telling you, what I'm feeling is real. So look into it. And if that doctor don't, find somebody who will. Because people will really, I have a me and doctors, I don't know, because they just do a lot of things that I just really don't agree with. I've had a recent situation with my mom with a doctor prescribing her a medication that she's not supposed to take with another medication that they prescribed her
Right.
with, and she had like a really bad reaction to it, just little things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And she was telling them she wasn't sure if she was supposed to take it, and they didn't listen to her. So
Mm-hmm.
just you speaking up for yourself is important. That's a big thing, because people, everybody isn't big. I'm not a big speaker, I'm not good at speaking up for
Mm-hmm.
myself sometimes.
I
Some
get
people are
it. Yeah.
timid. So,
Mm-hmm.
but with your
Mm-hmm.
health, you have to be.
Well, and especially for you as a black woman in
Mhm.
America, like you are at such a high risk of being a victim of, medical malpractice.
Especially
So,
pregnancies and just.
yeah, yeah. So you really do have to advocate for yourself, like you said. And yeah, so it was a lot. I am doing great now. Like, I have a great prognosis. It's chronic because there's no like pill that will make it go away forever.
Mhm.
I have to stay in some kind of treatment, but like if I wanted to have kids, I could have a baby. It's not like I am in a situation where I'm having to limit myself in any way. I can still work out, I can still live and do all the things that I want to do and have been doing. So I feel so grateful for that. With the medication that I have, it keeps everything in normal ranges. I have no issues at all, no symptoms. So, all of that to say, it's not a death sentence.
Yes. So
It
chronic just
rarely
means
is.
lifelong,
It
right?
rarely is, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll die with it, but I won't die because of it.
Right.
And, it gave me an opportunity to also be like, okay, how do I really want to live my life? I was not happy in my career. I was actually miserable in my career. And I started to realize like that also too, that stuff affects your health. So I
Mhm.
got clear on my values and my priorities, with this. And I'm still getting clear, but it really helps you like put things into perspective, I think. And then I do have pain, and I do have like weird things that I deal with just by virtue of the fact that I'm taking medication, and some of those things again go back to like needing rest and just saying I'm gonna rest because I have pain today. I don't feel good.
Mhm.
I'm taking these really heavy meds that make me tired, or they make me, sometimes I feel a little foggy, brain foggy. So it's just like my body saying like, we're good, we're fighting here with you, but you've got to rest. And that's also in my prep, like I said, respecting your body enough to say, okay, like I'm not going to do this thing anymore because I'm feeling bad, because I'm feeling bad because I'm not listening
Mhm.
to myself,
Mhm.
and that's like actually how we get ahead, I think, is like resting when we need to,
Yep.
because
And a lot of
we're
people
all
think
pretty burned
resting
out.
is. Yes, then you don't want to burn out. I always tell people to fill their cup before it's empty. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like when you're at a
Mm-hmm.
restaurant, you don't want your cup to be completely empty before you get a refill. You want your
Mm-hmm.
refill when it's midway. So don't wait until
Mm-hmm.
you're all the way out and then you're just burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
big.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is, but it's like tough with this whole hustle culture that we
Yeah.
live in,
Yes, I'm
Again, so
bad.
that's why we have to
I'm
talk.
bad.
Me too.
I can't even speak because I'm one to like, okay, let me get another job or let me get a side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like, no, girl, rest.
Mm-hmm.
You know you're tired. Go to
Mm-hmm.
sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Your mind is
Mm-hmm.
telling you. Your mind is telling you. It's just I know how it is, like the economy is like crazy and like everybody's
Mm-hmm.
just trying to make ends meet. But take
Mm-hmm.
care of
Right.
yourself because you still want to see it through. You still want to be alive. So
Mm-hmm.
take care of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. It's a lot.
So I think you already kind of answered the next question. The next question was how has, finding out about your diagnosis impacted your mental health? But I feel
I
like you
mean,
kind of touched on
yeah, I think we talked about that. It was, I was able to handle it in a much better way, more productive way, I think, than I
it.
would have if it had been a few years before. Yeah, because I had
Very
built,
powerful.
I had gotten my skills together. Yeah.
Very emotionally intelligent. I'm telling you, girl. You can't
Thank
teach this in
you.
schools. People do not have it. Like there's so many people that are like academically smart but have no emotional regulation skills. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, can't do
Mm-hmm.
that one.
Mm-hmm.
So, what message or words of advice do you have for anyone or just anybody at all in any similar situation that you've gone through?
Yeah. I mean, just what I said before, just like trust your gut. Like when you have thoughts and feelings, like just sit with them and be with them and think about like maybe what they mean and where they're coming from. Because, like, our mindset and the way that we talk to ourselves and the way that we think really does determine a lot of our outcomes, and I think that, you know, part of healing and being able to accept life on life's terms is to like radically accept where we are, how we're feeling, and the steps that we're taking based on how we feel in certain situations, not based on the outcome or how we can control it. Just being present in your body, listening to yourself, detaching from outcomes, and tuning out like the noise of people around you who have something to say about what you're doing, what you're not doing. I have had a lot of relationship changes since I started healing and getting into recovery, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like you are the priority, and it's not selfish. It's not, um, you know, being isolated or having to have a period of kind of a loneliness and focus on you is actually like a really nice place to start. It's not like you're actually breaking through and making change. So I just tell people like all the time, like find connections where you can find them and with people who are going to validate your experience, because you can't do it alone, but you cannot do it around people who cause you to be traumatized or who continue to perpetuate cycles. And that's like very uncomfortable. But our thoughts and like the environments that we put ourselves in are so important, and the people that we connect with. So if it feels wrong to you, like don't do it, or take a step back, like, and pause. That's my big thing, is like just pause for a second, just pause, and kind of come back to your body and like remember that like it is gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay, like, and you can keep yourself safe. It's like all those therapy things that you learn, but like it's really true.
That's
you
true.
know
Yeah.
we have choices now. So just like embodying your power. My therapist is like, you need to embody your authority.
Hmm.
Like,
And don't let
okay.
anybody else take it from you. That is so beautifully said. Because we
Okay.
will just give people our power,
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, no, we have to take our power back and gain control. That was so beautifully
Mm-hmm.
said. I really appreciate those words of
Well,
advice. Because
thank
girl,
you.
I'm taking the advice as well. I need
Thank
it
you.
because it's
We
really
do
hard
need it.
sometimes just being present.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always thinking about, okay, well, I need to do this to get there, but
Mm.
I don't even realize that I was praying for times like this, praying for the times that I'm in right now. And
Yes.
I'm not even appreciating that. So how can I get some more? So I just,
Yes.
that's
Yes.
the phase I'm in right now.
Exactly.
I appreciate that.
Yes. And being grateful, right? Like,
Hmm.
because you're doing it. You're doing
Yeah.
the thing. Like, my girl yesterday was like, you know, you're worried about like your mother like coming back and judging you or finding you. Like, who cares? What if someone finds you and they're like, I want to pay you to do XYZ,
Exactly.
or I want to
Hmm.
work with you to do whatever. Like, we really, like, fear for me has been like the driving force of my self-sabotage. Like, that's what it
I
always
was going to
is
say
just
that.
fear. So just being in the moment and being like, oh, okay, like I have these tools in place and these boundaries, so I can do this thing. And then if I have to reevaluate the boundary, that's fine. But I can embody the power that I'm in today by being grateful that I got myself to this place, to now where I'm like, okay, I want to do this, like you said. Now how am I going to get there? I'm here in the present. What do I do next to get to that point? And like I said, it's always about detaching from certain like outcomes in the day to day. You have to do that, because otherwise I used to get like knocked back all the time, because I would just get so thrown off by being rejected or encountering a hurdle or something, or having somebody thinks my idea is shitty or my outfit is
Yeah.
shitty or whatever. Like, it's like, who cares? You just have to stop worrying about what other
You're not
people are
alone.
thinking
A
and
lot of
doing.
people, a lot of us feel that way. Like there's so many people out there who want to start pages and want to start YouTube channels or podcasts, but they're scared to because society is like, oh, it's oversaturated.
Mm-hmm.
Girl, if you don't
Mm-hmm.
start that podcast or start what you want to do, I don't care. There's no, I just feel like there's no such thing as an oversaturated topic when it's your passion or something that you
Right.
love, because you could bring something unique to the table that nobody
Mm-hmm.
has, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I advocate for, I don't care who wants to do it. It could be a million other girls to
I
do it. I say get
agree.
in line and let's do it. Let's do it together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm a girl's girl. I'm a community's girl. So I'm
Me
somebody who's
too.
definitely just gonna, I'm definitely gonna uplift the next person, especially when you're trying to make a difference in the community, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So don't be afraid,
Yes.
girlfriend. We're here to
Thank
listen.
you.
You're gonna have a whole community behind you, ready and waiting. And I'm gonna
Thank
be
you. I
first in
love
line.
you. Oh, I
Of
love you so
course,
much. You're
of
the
course.
best. No, you're
You.
so right. You're so right. And we need community now, like more than ever.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that we are going to have to like prepare ourselves to rely on each other and come together and just make a way to do that. So I'm like you. I'm trying to figure out ways to make that happen. So,
And we're gonna get there. So
yeah.
I just have one final question for you, Ashley.
Mm-hmm.
The last question is, what would you tell your younger self?
I would tell her, we've gone into all of this stuff, but I would tell her that it's fine. Everything's fine. You are perfect the way that you are. The way that you come into this world is perfect. It's exactly how it should be. And that you don't have to change for anybody. You don't have to restrict or make yourself small, quiet, and unoffensive. Like, just be you. That's what I tell my kids. That's what I would tell my inner child. I want her to know that, like, she's safe and that she has choices and gifts and natural talents that are still in there. We're born with inherent worth. And I tell this to my kids all the time, like, there's nothing that you have to do to earn that or deserve that or prove yourself that you're worthy. Like, we're all worthy. Like you were just saying, like, to start, just do it because you can. Like, there's a reason why you have the passion. So I would tell her that you don't need a man to take care of you. You do not have to reproduce to be worthy in this world as a woman. I would have just wanted her to have an opportunity to be free and just like pursue that at all costs and not like I spent a lot of time like letting other people dictate how I was going to live my life. So, the thing that I try to tell my kids more than anything is like who you are and what you love is what you should do. Who you
Yes.
are is what you should be, and what you love is what you should do. And far be it from me to tell you otherwise. Like, I will always be here to support and love and be their biggest cheerleader. That's what all children need and deserve. And if I would have had that, my life would have been very different, I think. So, I I try to tell my inner child that now, and I think we can all do that. It's not stupid. It's not dumb. It might feel kind of weird, but like
Right.
we can self-talk our inner child into actually being healed so that we aren't acting on those impulses and those behaviors. That's like people don't realize like you're stuck at a developmental age because that's where the trauma happened. So we have to like talk to those parts of us and get them all on board with a mindset, like I said, of like affirmation and forward looking, like positive, not toxic, but just believing that you can have and that you can do and like that it's gonna be fine. So
I really love that. I feel like you hit so many great points. I just, I think the biggest thing for me that you said is probably just being authentic.
yeah.
Just being yourself. You can't get anywhere else if you're trying to be somebody else, and you don't
Mm-hmm.
need anybody else to dictate that for you. Even if it
Mm-hmm.
is a familial figure trying to do that, you can
Yeah.
overcome that.
Yeah.
And a lot of us have that problem where it's a familial figure, so you think that it kind of makes you feel small because
Mm-hmm.
that's somebody you're supposed to look up to.
Mm-hmm.
But just owning it and taking control of your life back, because that's what you
Mm-hmm.
deserve.
Yeah, for sure. We all deserve that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yay.
This is really
This is
the
so
end. It really
good.
felt like more of a conversation than an interview. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed talking to you. I
Oh,
really
me too.
did.
Same. No, I loved
Yes,
it. Thank you. You made it so.
of
You are
course.
so. You're just great for this. I mean, when I heard the episode of the inner child episode, I just fell in love with you. But I thought like you really are. You made some points that were so astute, and I don't want to like keep talking, but like this is just great for you. So I'm
And
just
that
so
makes me
happy that I
feel
got to be with you on this.
you really are reassuring me because I'm still in graduate school. Like I'm trying to navigate through and I'm trying to, be a counselor one day, and just hearing
Mhm.
people like you tell me that you like what I do, it just makes me feel so happy
You would
because
be great. You are perfect for this field. So I would love to hear like more of your stories someday. So
of
hopefully we can
course
do
we
that.
want to hear your stories. We're ready for your we are ready for yours. So everybody, y'all
Okay.
tell Ashley to start because we are ready.
Okay. It's out there now. It's in the
Yes,
world.
it's we're
So
here. It's up.
mhm.
It's up and
Mhm.
stuff.
It's up.
So you need to tell me this is the end of the episode. Mind you, you are amazing, you are worthy, you are blessed, and you are the best. Thank y'all so much. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Bye.